Johnny Murr here, and welcome to another review. Today, we're going to be doing a review on Star Wars Outlaws. I just finished it as of a couple hours ago. I posted a little bit of some thoughts on Twitter and my Snapchat and stuff like that. And yeah, I've been sitting on it a little bit just so I can gain kind of what I want to talk about during this review, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of it. This is the first ever open world Star Wars game. It is developed by Massive Entertainment, which is published by Ubisoft. Massive Entertainment is the studio behind the Avatar game. Recently, they are developers behind the Tom Clancy's The Division games. And so, yeah, they're a pretty good studio overall. I enjoyed Avatar and the Division games. I actually really loved Division 1. But yeah, with Star Wars Outlaws, there was a lot of expectations going into this. The fact that it is Star Wars already sets a lot of certain expectations with the game. The fact that Ubisoft set certain expectations. So we're going to dive in deep into all of that, and I'll give you guys my thoughts on what I thought after playing. I think I spent probably around 15 hours beating the main story. But yeah, we're going to talk about it. But if you guys love video games, doesn't matter what you love, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, third party, indie, VR, whatever. If you guys just love video games like I do, consider subscribing, share with your friends. I really do appreciate any kind of support you guys give me. We do daily video game content on the channel, and I appreciate it. But without further ado, we're going to get into talking about Star Wars Outlaws. So this is a game I was absolutely hyped for. Number one, you guys should know, Star Wars is my favorite franchise of all time. Not just in gaming or anything, just my favorite franchise, period, in the world. I just love the world of Star Wars. I love the characters. I love just what the franchise means and stands for. And so, automatically, if there's a Star Wars game, I'm going to be excited for it almost no matter what. And so, yeah, I was really excited about that. And I am a person who actually enjoys Ubisoft games. I think they get a lot, too much hate for a lot of reasons, but you know, I understand some of the critiques about Ubisoft, but at the end of the day, I really do enjoy Ubisoft as a publisher, and I enjoy a lot of their games. So with Star Wars Outlaws, you know, we knew an open-world Ubisoft game was coming. We didn't know what it was, and they announced Outlaws, and I was like, okay, I can kind of see where they're going with this. This is a game where you play as a scoundrel. In this case, the main character is Kay Vess. She has this little companion. His name is Nix. It's like this little pet, and you kind of just go on this big adventure across the galaxy. In this case, the story is about getting crew members to basically do this massive heist. Along the way, you make friends, you make enemies, and there's a lot of plot twists in this game, I will say. This game kind of reminded me of like a Mission Impossible meets Star Wars type thing, and you know, I really enjoyed that. Now, I almost have to break this review in 3 sections because I had 3 distinct emotions when playing this game, like my overall feeling about playing this game. In the first act, and I'm going to break it up into 3 acts because I do think the game kind of takes place like that. The first act takes place pretty much entirely on one planet, or the starting planet, and then the first actual, like, go explore this place planet. The first act, I think, was pretty miserable. Like, it was really brutal. It was very mid, in my opinion. There were some things to like about it, but it really just wasn't hitting in the first act. I think there was a lot of just go here, go do that, talk to somebody, do that, blah, blah, just to unlock things that you can actually use in the game, like vehicles and just upgrades that actually make you useful and effective. And it was really just not hitting. They weren't building on any characters. They weren't upping any stakes. They weren't giving us super duper exciting missions or anything. It really was mid. Granted, the game is visually stunning. The game is beautiful. I love the environment, and that was honestly the best part about Chapter 1, is just going and experiencing these visuals for the first time, going into the city, seeing how much detail is actually put into the world. It is sometimes jaw-dropping. In other times, especially when it comes to character models, it's a little rough, but for the most part, the visuals are absolutely stunning, and I can't give it enough credit for it. Probably some of my favorite environments of the year. But the first act really was just mid, if even. It might be even worse than that. I would say like the first act is like a 4 out of 10, honestly. Then we get to the second act, where I just thought, okay, it's getting better. I'm kind of having fun. but I still not really feeling it. I'm not getting that urge to keep going. I'm kind of just, okay, I'm enjoying it, number one, because I feel like I'm actually doing things, and number two, we're actually building on things here, and so I can appreciate it. But still, I would say the second act was kind of like a 6 out of 10 type situation. But then we get to the third act, and I'm not gonna lie, this third act low-key got me thinking this game was peak, because that third act was magnificent. It was immaculate. Like, I genuinely, and I say this like as honest as I can, because I know this game's getting a lot of hate right now. That third act, low-key, might be some of my favorite hours in a video game this year. And I'm just off the back of Black Myth Wukong. I loved a lot of games this year, like Tekken, like Prince of Persia, like Hellblade 2. But this third act just hit all of the right notes for me, where I would say that third act was low-key like a 9.5 out of 10 game. If the entire game was what the third act was, this would be one of the best Star Wars games out there. And I'm being as honest as I can. Now listen, are there still issues in the third act that I definitely understand why people don't like it? Yes. There's a lot of creative decisions throughout this entire game that people have an issue with that I completely understand. But for me, and like I said in my Black Myth Wukong review, these reviews are completely biased. They're completely my personal opinion and my personal experience. I'm not being objective. I'm not trying to act like a critic here. I'm just giving you my honest thoughts about how I felt while playing this game and what I think about the game. And that third act was amazing. That third act was amazing. The problem is, the first and second act, getting to the third act, was very underwhelming and disappointing. And it really hurts because I feel like that third act really carried a heavy load when it comes to this game, because I do think this game has a lot of great ideas, and it sets up a lot of great things. I just don't feel like they ever fully execute or fully develop any of those ideas until the third act. But even then, a lot of things that happen in the third act are due to the main story, and so even afterwards, when you can go explore the planets, you really don't feel like it, because that's not what the third act was amazing for. The third act was amazing because of the story and because of the quests you actually did for the main story. So overall, there are still a lot of issues, and we're going to get talking about it, but let's go ahead and dissect this game piece by piece, starting off with the gameplay. Now, the gameplay is debatably the worst part about this game, I would say, personally, because on one hand, you have combat that I think it's solid. It's okay. It does what it's supposed to do. It's a shooter. It's a third-person shooter. You get a gun that can switch up its firing modes, that has a couple different abilities. You have the most bare-bones melee combat to take out some enemies if need be. It's okay. It's nothing special. I do feel... I will say, I do think the shooting in the game is actually really good. Like, it feels impactful. It feels meaty. Like, it actually feels like a very polished shooting, but again, it's just not really a very fleshed out combat system at all whatsoever. My favorite part about the whole gameplay entirety, throughout the whole game, was your companion Nyx. The things you're able to do with Nyx, and the way the game and level designs were formatted to use Nyx, I just really enjoyed it. Every time I used Nyx, I was like in my head, I was like, you go, buddy. Like, I'm so proud of you, because Nyx really is, honestly, Nyx might be the MVP of the whole game. There are 3 characters in particular I really, really enjoyed in this game. But yeah, I do think the gameplay is just whatever, and unfortunately, I do think the gameplay would be so much better if there wasn't a huge chunk of it that honestly brings the whole game down by like a 1.5, and that is the stealth. The stealth in this game is abysmal. It low-key ruins the product in a lot of ways. When I said this game could be so much better than it actually is, a large part of that is due to that stealth, because unfortunately every quest you go on pretty much has stealth sections, and some of those stealth sections can last up to minutes long, and it has very little complexity and depth to it. It is janky as all ever. There's a lot of uneven and just unorganized design with it. It is one of the worst stealth systems I've done. And just for the fact that it's not like anything is straight up bad. It is just so boring. It is so boring doing these stealth segments, and you just want to get through it as much as possible. And I will say, in the last 2 or 3 main missions, some of the stealth segments were better because there were it was actually kind of stressful. But again, that was kind of due to the story, not the actual gameplay itself. The gameplay was just the exact same as you do in Chapter 2, or the second quest. Unfortunately, the stealth does not develop at all in the game. The stealth you were doing in the opening quest is the exact same stealth you were doing in the final quest. And that's just not what you want to see from a game like this. That's supposed to be this massive open world game. So that is a huge problem. And unfortunately, the AI is really rough in this game. They either have the best eyesight in the world or they have the worst eyesight in the world. You can walk up to somebody and they just not even see you. But then 2 seconds later, you're walking and somebody from 20 blocks down sees you and alarms the alarm. And unfortunately, the worst part about this is the level design, the game design, and the fact that you're required to do stealth. A lot of games, you have a choice. You can either go guns blazing or you can play it stealthily. This game forces you to do stealth because a lot of the quests, your objective is to not alert the guards, not sound the alarm, not get caught. And a lot of times, some of the AI just see you from miles away and they alert the alarm and you have to restart. And unfortunately, the checkpoints in this game are rough. They are rough where you then have to go back so far, or you just have to keep retrying because the AI just keeps messing you up and the stealth is just boring. Easily the worst part about this game. I will say the traversal and exploration is whatever. It's like your just whatever, third-person action adventure game. You have a little grappling hook. You can climb things. Pretty simple, but nonetheless effective. I actually did not run into any bugs, throughout the whole game. Honestly, my playthrough was really clean. I'm not gonna lie. I know a big part of hating on this game is because the bugs and glitches are apparently abundant. I'll be honest. I don't think I ran into, one major bug. Maybe I had some, assets popping in and out of, the way in the distance background type thing, horizon line. But, I'll be honest, I had a really clean playthrough. I'm just keeping it real here. This isn't me glazing. I just literally crapped on the gameplay. I generally just think I had a smooth ride. But that could, again, just be my experience. I did play this on Xbox Series X, by the way. Now let's move to something I pretty much can't say anything bad about, and that is its music. I mean, this is Star Wars. Like I said at the beginning of the video, when a Star Wars game already has default expectations, and one of the expectations is you gotta have Star Wars music. And it's not okay, take music from Star Wars and put it in. No, you have to have music that fits the Star Wars feeling, gives you that Star Wars emotion that you get when experiencing a product of Star Wars, and it absolutely does that. It's honestly some of my favorite music from a Star Wars. I think Star Wars Outlaws has better music than... Honestly, I can't even think of another Star Wars game that has better music. The first one that comes to mind is Jedi Survivor. I'm not trying to compare the games, but I genuinely think this is one of the Star Wars games that has some of the best music in it. And then we get to the visuals. You already heard. I think they are absolutely fantastic. One of the best parts about the game. And now we get to one of the most interesting things about this game, and that is its story. The reason I say interesting is not because it's an interesting story. I think it's a pretty simple story. It's interesting because, like I said, the first 2 acts were really not good. The third act was really, really good. But again, I say it's interesting because the third act is only so good because of what Act 2 did. So let me explain. Basically, your main character is Kay Vess. She was great, by the way. I genuinely really loved Kay Vess. I actually connected with her way more than I thought I was going to, based off the start of the game. I would love to see Kay Vess appear in other Star Wars projects. I doubt she will, but yeah, I thought she was great. She has her companion Nyx, and you basically meet a bunch of characters throughout your journey. You have to go you have to go gather a crew to go on this heist. You get this you kind of get this like guardian droid, ND5, and he was also fantastic. One of my favorite characters in the game. These three characters, Nyx, K, and ND5, which by the way are the main three characters. They were phenomenal. They were phenomenal. I loved all three of them. I would love to see all three of them again. But the first act is kind of trying to set up Kay and Nyx to be these main, like, protagonists. And I don't think what was being fed to us was working. Like, the cutscenes that were taking place weren't really all that interesting. They were kind of boring. Where it really starts picking up is just your, like, in-between cutscene dialogue. You could just sense the characters' personalities and characteristics in the things they say, the way they do, some of their mannerisms. And you can be like, I can see what kind of approach they're taking with these characters when it comes to their personalities. And then you get to the second act, and that's when they actually start fleshing out. I get the first act is supposed to set up things. It shouldn't take 5 hours to set up things, but that's what the first act did. It took like 5 hours to get something going. And then the second act was kind of fleshing things out, and you started gathering more of the crew. You go to different planets to gather different crew members, and I thought all the crew members were enjoyable. I don't think none of them really made me fall in love or get like too interested in, but I think their interactions with the main protagonists were very good. And in that, you can start to get a little more attached to your main protagonist. But that third act is when everything comes together, and all the quests and the dialogue and the interactions you've had in the past kind of just come full circle. And it really does feel like this game was written with only the third act in mind. And when they were happy with that third act, they're like, okay, now how can we add like 10 hours of content before that to get to where we actually want to be? Like, that's what it felt like, unfortunately, because there were moments where I felt like I might have cried during this game. Unfortunately, going up to it, I didn't have like the greatest experience and journey getting up to that third act, so I don't feel like the emotions were high enough for me to cry. But there are moments where I'm like, man, if this was fleshed out even further, this would be such an emotional moment. There were moments where some plot twists happened where I if they fleshed out things more, I might have been like, no way. But instead, I'm like, wow, interesting. Okay. Like, it was more or less just shock rather than like pure surprise. But that third act was really, really good. I will say, I'm not gonna spoil anything major in this video, but there is a character that shows up in the third act that genuinely got me hyped. Oh boy, I was not expecting it at all. I listened to reviews, and one of their positives was that it didn't intertwine with any of the movies, or like it didn't like mess with canon or anything. There was a character that if you knew was in this game, you'd be like, how do you do that without messing up canon? Like, it was pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, this game is just, there's so many goods about it, and there's so many bads. I will say I don't really enjoy the whole syndicate system where you have the different factions you have to try and please and upset some of the factions. I didn't really enjoy that. But here's what I'll say, is at the end of the day, and we're reaching the final part of this review and my kind of conclusion on the game. At the end of the day, I'm happy I played it. I'm happy I finished it. And because of that third act, I genuinely enjoyed the game. But it has a lot of issues. It has a lot of problems. It has a lot of decisions and creative decisions where I'm like, why did you decide to do that? Why is this the case? Why couldn't it have been that way? There's a lot of those. But when it comes to a video game, I think it is pretty I'm not gonna say bad. I don't think anything in the game is genuinely bad. I just think everything in the game is pretty much undercooked, except that third act story and the visuals. The visuals are outstanding and the music is great. But strictly when it comes to gameplay, I think everything's just undercooked, and a lot of the story in the first and second act is undercooked. But because this game does a lot of good and a lot of bad, there is one thing about this game particularly that stands out from the rest. And that's the fact that it's a Star Wars game. Even if you didn't like anything about the story, anything about the gameplay, there is one thing this game does almost perfectly, and that's its job. It is a fantastic Star Wars game. They really brought the world and the characters of Star Wars to life. They brought the feeling enhanced by the music and visuals. They brought the feeling of Star Wars. They brought the mood, the emotion, the energy of Star Wars. And they really do make you feel like you are experiencing your own Star Wars journey. And I respect that to the utmost full. And for somebody who Star Wars is their favorite franchise of all time, I feel like because of that, there is almost a certain level of which I have to enjoy this game. And unfortunately, I did. Even though I've crapped on this game a lot this review, and probably in some of the podcasts and other things that I've done, at the end of the day, I genuinely enjoyed this game for what it is, a Star Wars open world game. It gave me some characters that I genuinely fell in love with, gave me some combat that I was okay with, but unfortunately at the end of the day, it is a undercooked game with a lot of flaws, and therefore I'm going to be giving this score, and this is a really hard one. There are moments where I'm like, this is like a 5 out of 10 game, and then there are moments where like, this is kind of like an 8 out of 10 game, honestly. But I think where I'm going to land personally with this game is, and again, this is completely biased, this is completely my personal opinion, and, you know, I'm not trying to be objective, I'm not trying to be a critic here, I'm just giving you my thoughts. I think this game is low-key the definition of what a 7 out of 10 game is. It's just good. It's just good. There's nothing majorly wrong with the game outside of stealth, but there's nothing majorly outstanding outside of the third act story. So I think when you balance all these things, and when you just have a lot of average components in this game, I do think it is good because it is a Star Wars. If this was just a random game, like a new IP or something, the conversation might be different. But the thing is, this game's goal was to be a Star Wars open world game, and it did succeed in that. Even though there were a lot of fundamental flaws with the game design, it succeeded in what it was set out to do, and it made me enjoy myself. So I'm gonna give it a good rating, meaning 7 out of 10. I'm gonna place it on the C tier. Like I'm gonna say it's like a C tier game, 7 out of 10, pretty solid. That's where I'm gonna give it. But ladies and gentlemen, that is gonna do it for my review. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of Star Wars Outlaws? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to know. What were some of your favorite characters, favorite moments? Just let me know. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Johnny Moore out. Peace.